The Supreme Court voted to uphold Trump's ban on transgenders in the military, and this transgender decided to debate Scott Jennings on CNN. Bad idea.
That the commander-in-chief's opinion is all that matters. You've said that twice now.
Well, so under the Constitution, yes.
So if he wakes up tomorrow and says it's not okay to be gay or lesbian and serve, because that's his opinion.
That's their opinion. You're allowed to have one. You're allowed to have one. You're also allowed to run for president and become commander-in-chief yourself. But until you do, he's the commander-in-chief.
I have to just say, I didn't hear.
But it wasn't just the transgender who got heated and made dumb points. It was the rest of the panel, including this black sports anchor who shouldn't even be talking about politics.
When you don't protect the most vulnerable, you wind up making it worse for everybody else that's in the marginalized community. You don't think trans people are vulnerable in this country?
So is it your position that the commander-in-chief should recruit people who you're describing as vulnerable into the lethal fighting force?
It's SeanDaniel here, and there's Scott Jennings there, so I know you clicked, just like I clicked as soon as I saw this. Not only because it's Scott Jennings, not only because it's CNN, but he's going after a transgender who used to be in the military, used to be a man, supposedly, and is now supposedly a woman. Oh, he's going to have a field day. You guys are going to enjoy this video. Not just because he goes after her, because the whole panel makes ridiculous assumptions, starting with this one lady on here, including the host, Abby Phillips, who's black, about the idea of now Trump's going to ban black people from the military. You're going to enjoy it. Sit back, relax. Filming here from South Korea in a hostile lobby for you guys on my way to Seoul. That's why we have this weird setup. Let's go. Like and subscribe if you enjoy the video, at least the like button.
Allowing transgender troops to serve hurts lethality and it hurts readiness. What do you say to that?
Well, there's no evidence of that. I think that, if that was the case, we've seen transgender people serving honorably for the last several years. And what has changed between now and then? They've just woken up to a new administration who has a different outlook on their ability to serve. So I think that, if you talk to people who are serving on active duty alongside transgender troops, they're not making these complaints. The leaders in the military are not making these complaints. These are political complaints about military service. So I think that all of the courts that have looked at this issue and looked at it, have said there's nothing in fact to back up what the government is claiming here. In fact, the judges challenged them to produce evidence, and they couldn't produce any evidence. So I think it's a really dark day for our country where basically we're allowed to discriminate against a class of people.
Scott, if they can't produce evidence that this actually does, in fact, have an impact on readiness, how is this not then just discrimination?
Well, it's the opinion of the commander-in-chief, who, according to our Constitution, is the head of the military. Regardless of anyone's opinion or anybody's, whatever side you're on, whether you're for it or against it, at some juncture, the president is the commander-in-chief of the military, and he has and should have broad latitude to determine how the armed forces should be operated. And so I think that's what he's doing here. I think that's ultimately what the court said today, was that the president is the commander-in-chief, and we gotta respect that.
To her point, if there's not a downside, and it's been going on for years now, and I'm just presenting your argument to them.
Yeah.
What is the argument other than Trump, Hegseth, just doesn't want trans people in the military?
Well, I think that the president, we'll ultimately see. I think that's why the court is allowing the president to move forward with this until it works itself through the court system. Maybe the Supreme Court will be the final arbiter here to say, yeah or nay, you can do this. But ultimately, I think the court is showcasing deference to the executive, saying that, look, you're the president, you're over the military. You do, for the most part, get to sort of dictate the standards of our military. And I don't really see how you can push back against that. Again, we'll see what happens in the court.
I can. I'm sorry, I can. What if the president wakes up tomorrow and says, I don't want any black people in the military? Do we give deference to him on that? Well, no, wait a second. It's not ridiculous. It's not ridiculous because you're discriminating against a group of people in a very similar way. No,
I knew you were going to say that. But
excuse me. Well, I'm glad you.
I'm going to leave this one alone today.
I'm curious. Why is it ridiculous? You just said the president should be the one who just decides.
Right.
So if he decides, he wakes up tomorrow and says, I think it's bad for morale, it's bad for cohesiveness, for there to be black people in the military, Latino people in the military, just in her hypothetical scenario, what's the difference between that and what we're seeing here?
Are you really going to go down this ridiculous?
I'm just.
I'm sorry.
This is ridiculous. This is a ridiculous argument.
Well, okay.
The president,
what they've already
the president
said
and the secretary of defense, the president and secretary of defense have an argument here. They believe that readiness and unit cohesion and overall operations of the military are impacted by this. That is their opinion, and that is the opinion of the commander in chief, who the Constitution gives broad latitude to run the armed forces. So. That's their opinion. You're allowed to have one. You're allowed to have one. You're also allowed to run for president and become commander in chief yourself. But until you do, he's the commander in chief.
I have to just say, I didn't hear an answer to the hypothetical, right? I just didn't hear it. I didn't. I mean,
Oh, that's why we love Scott Jennings. Before we even break down the idiocy of the first question, before we see the rest of the clips, I love how he turned it around. They want to have Trump have to have this detailed, broken down explanation on why he can do this, why he can't do that. He was voted in as the commander-in-chief. He's going to be the commander who commands the direction of the military. So if he doesn't want transgenders in, that's up to him. Like Scott said, if you want to change it, run for president yourself. I find it comedic how many people want to sit on a panel and criticize the decisions of a president when they've never even seen a battlefield, never even talked to people who have dealt with battlefields, never even talked to a different general who's dealt with a multitude of decisions regarding battles. That was a great turnaround by Scott. But do you also see how they give the most ridiculous question and example to Scott Jennings and to us conservatives to guilt trip us into a corner? Well, if Trump's going to ban transgenders, what if he's going to start banning black people one day? And then you have to give up this whole argument and breakdown of why it's an illogical question when you shouldn't have to. It's just so ridiculously dumb and is not even in the same stratosphere. That's why we don't like liberals. At least I don't. Now, let's see how it continues. And even the black host gets into it, trying to defend the position before we ultimately get to the end where the transgender tries to fire back. Doesn't go too well.
Okay, the definition of discrimination, according to the American Psychological Association, discrimination is the unfair or prejudicial treatment of people or groups based on characteristics such as race, gender, age, or sexual orientation. What is the difference between, prohibiting certain groups like transgender people from serving versus, people based on their race or even their gender, frankly?
I personally think there's a difference, and I'm just going to leave it at that.
Well, I will say...
Do you believe that race and... Are you saying that the quality of race and the quality of transgender are the same?
I'm just asking the question because I think you're making there's a distinction, but you're not explaining why.
No, I'm asking you guys brought up the hypothetical. Are you arguing that someone's race is the same as someone choosing to become transgender?
But your argument, you've made the argument twice that the commander-in-chief's opinion is all that matters. You've said that twice now.
Well, so the Constitution, yes.
So if he wakes up tomorrow and says it's not okay to be gay or lesbian and serve, because that's his opinion, there's nothing to back that up. They meet the physical standards. They meet the intellectual standards. They have voluntarily decided to serve their country, to give their life for this country. So many of us don't have to. That it's the opinion without any basis in fact that's what matters more than the Constitution of equal rights and equal protection.
Go ahead.
Before we see the sports reporter come in with a ridiculous statement, comment down below. Would you rather face in a war, you're going against an opposing military, and you have to have some combat? Would you rather face a woman who became a man and is now in the military coming up to fight you, or would you rather face a man who was born a man? I think I'd rather face a woman who changed into a man. Hence, where they get the idea for combat readiness. Let me know what you guys think. Comment it down below. I know what I would rather face.
No, I was going to say the other thing, or there's a few things that bother me about this, and mostly it was the language of the policy, right? When you're reading at some of these words, transgender people as inherently untruthful, undisciplined, dishonorable. That's like a very weighty thing to say about people who are courageously deciding to protect this country. The other problem, Scott, is that it's never enough. It's bathrooms today. It's sports today. It's sports tomorrow. It's the military today.
No, it's also sports today, by the way.
Yeah, it is sports today. And
80% of Americans agree, by the way.
Oh, that's fine. And 80%, guess what? The majority sometimes is wrong. That also happens, right? Because the majority used to believe that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was somebody who was a threat, that somebody who was not a good American. The majority of people used to be against civil rights. Were they right? No, they weren't. And so the whole point is when you target one group, and inevitably that line moves to everybody else. And I'm not saying he's coming for black people tomorrow, but considering that this is a military or this is a leadership that is already using DEI as code word for black people already when it comes to the military, suddenly when you don't protect the most vulnerable, you wind up making it worse for everybody else that's in the marginalized community. You don't think trans people are vulnerable in this country?
So is it your position that the commander-in-chief should recruit people who you're describing as vulnerable into the lethal fighting force?
He should recruit people who want to serve and protect this country. And it's really kind of ironic considering he dodged the draft that he suddenly has an opinion about
He has an opinion because he won the election.
Oh, I'm so glad the liberals did not win the last election. They would rather recruit in our military, which is in charge of protecting our country. They would rather recruit the vulnerable, even if they have a desire to serve our country. Recruit them because they deserve a chance, rather than the dominant men and women who will go out there and kick some ass. That was such a genius turnaround by Scott Jennings. So you'd rather recruit the vulnerable. You think that's what Trump needs to do? No, man. That's what Pete Hegseth said. I know it doesn't sound nice. You can't put it on a commercial. It's not politically correct. Who the hell would be scared of a transgender in a battle more than a real man? Oh my God. That's literally how they would protect our country. And that's why we can say with certainty that a lot of the Democrats and liberals they desire the destruction of our country in order for them to stay in power. If you would rather have transgenders in the military over strong, capable men and sometimes women, then you are for having our country be weaker. Also, you can stay in power and you can get more votes from the liberals, from the transgender, all this stuff, because you're not saying anything offensive. It's really, really deep when you think about it, especially in the soft, patsy cake, lovey-dovey, politically correct way they try to package it to make it to mask really how evil it is. It's evil because it's blindness. You're blinding yourself to just the obvious fact of not only the perversion it takes to do something like that to yourself, but also the fact of who is stronger or weaker. A transgender woman who became a man or a man. You guys know this, I know this, and thank God Scott Jennings knows this, and so does Trump and Pete Hegseth. Really enjoyed this video, hope you did as well. It's itsSeanDaniel here. Subscribe and like if you want to see more, and I will see you in the next one. Adios from South Korea.